Welcome to lesson 1 of the topic meaning and scope of government. Okay, so meaning and scope of government. This topic is going to be covered in 2 lessons. So this is the first part of the 2 lessons. So we are going to look at the definitions of government, that is the meaning of government. Then we look at the scope of government. When we say scope of government, we are simply asking ourselves which areas does government cover. So we are looking at all the areas that government covers. Okay, that is the scope of government. Which areas will government cover? As we are studying government, which areas of government are we going to study? Okay, so that is the scope of government, the areas that are being covered by government, right? All the areas that government entails, or let's say all the things that government entails, all the aspects of government, that is the scope of government. All right, so the objectives for today's lesson, we are going to look at the basic foundations of government. Let me put it in a nice way, the basic aspects of government. Basically, we will talk about 5 scopes of government. Okay, so the scope of government you are going to talk about, we are going to discuss 5 scopes of government, 5 areas that government occupy. Okay, 5 areas. In fact, we can group all the categories into basically 5 areas. So government covers basically 5 areas. Then we look at definition of government. At our level, we will define government in 3 ways. Okay, then finally we look at the features of government. Then today's lesson will come to an end. All right, so let's start with the scope of government. I've already said that when we talk about scope of government, we are asking ourselves which areas will government cover. As we are studying government, what are the things that we are going to study? Okay, so let's even focus on the academic aspect. As we are studying government, what are some of the things we are going to study? The areas we are going to talk about as far as government is concerned, that is the scope of government. It's not only about academics, okay, as we will define it in 3 ways, but I want us to capture it in academic setting, and it will help us to understand well. As we are studying government, which areas are we going to study? Okay, or as we are talking about government, which areas will government cover? As said earlier on, we are saying that we are going to talk about 5 basic areas. Okay, 5 basic areas. So we have political institutions. When we talk of political institutions, we are talking about those institutions that have direct bearing on government and politics, or in other form, political institutions refers to those institutions that have direct effects on government and politics. Okay, so all the institutions that concern themselves with the processes of governing and then the concept of politics are termed as political institutions. Let's take, for instance, our homes. Okay, there are a lot of mechanisms that are put in place in our homes to ensure orderliness. There are a lot of a lot of mechanisms, a lot of structures are being put in place in our homes or in our families to ensure that things go well. But these laws, these structures that have been put in place, in fact, they don't have any effect on politics. They don't have any effect on the governing of the state. So we don't call them political institutions. Okay, so all the institutions, all the structures, all the mechanisms, all the laws that do not affect governance and politics are not part of political institutions. But then those structures, those agencies, those institutions that have effect on government and then politics, we say that those ones are political institutions. So let's look at, for instance, the legislature. Okay, we are very much aware that the legislature has a lot to do with the administration of a country or of a state. The judiciary has a lot to do with the administration of a state. The executive has a lot to do with the administration of a state or a country. So we say that these ones that have direct effect, they have relationship with administration of a state and then on politics, we say that these ones are political institutions. Okay, so we have two forms or two types of political institutions. We have traditional political institutions. Key example is chieftaincy. So in the studying of government, you realize that we will study chieftaincy. So that is one of the areas, political institution, one of the areas government covers. Okay, in studying political institutions, how do you know you are studying political institutions? We are saying you will study those institutions, those structures, those laws that are being put in place, and then they have effect on the administration of a state. They have effect on politics. All right, so you will learn chieftaincy, which is the traditional political institution. Then we have another form of political institution, which is modern political institution. Okay, modern political institution, we are talking about the current ones that are still in place, the ones we are still using: the executive, the legislature, the judiciary. That is the three arms of government. You realize that you will learn all these things. Okay, that's why I said let's even picture it in the aspect of academics. You realize that we will learn all these things. So there's an area that government covers. So we will learn the legislature, we will learn the executive, we will learn the judiciary. Okay, then these are the three main examples of modern political institutions, but we have other ones like political parties. Okay, let us not forget political parties have effects on politics. They have effects on the governing of the states. Okay, don't forget we vote for political parties, and then they in turn rule the state. Okay, we vote for people from political parties, and then they manage the affairs of the state. So political parties have effects on the administration of the state, and then political parties also have effect on politics. Why are we saying this? Politics is about power. Okay, who gets what, when does he get it, how does he get it? Politics is about how power is being acquired and used, and we know that these political parties are there to capture political power and then to rule the country. So they also have effect on politics and then administration of a state. And then we can talk about another example of modern political institutions like pressure groups. Okay, pressure groups. Pressure groups also have effect on politics and governing. How? We know that when governments bring up policies and then they are not going well, okay, these pressure groups come out to criticize the government. They come out to put the government on its toes so that the government administers in the right way. The government manages in the right way. So they have effect on governing. They also have effect on politics because sometimes these pressure groups sponsor some of the politicians, and then they go in for positions. Sometimes these pressure groups sponsors, when they realize that okay, this very party, all its policies are in our favor, they tend to hide somewhere, and then they support that political party to do its things or to perform its activities. So modern, we have political institutions, those political institutions or those institutions that have direct effects on government and then politics. We said we have two forms of political institutions: traditional political institutions. An example is chieftaincy. So we will learn chieftaincy, that is the pre-colonial era. We will learn chieftaincy during the colonial era, and then we learn chieftaincy after the colonial era, that is post colonialism, right? And then we have modern political institutions, these current ones we are using now, the three arms of government: executive, legislature, judiciary. Then we have the political parties, we have the pressure groups, among others. Then the next aspect that government covers is public administration. Public administration. When we say public, the public here is referring to the totality of the people, the general people. So the public is in a way referring to the people in the states. Okay, so, or in a way we can also say it's referring to the states itself. So public administration. How do we manage the state? How do we administer the affairs of the state? That is public administration, how the state is being managed. We vote for our leaders to manage the affairs of the state. Okay, so they are making laws, they are implementing these laws, judiciary is interpreting these laws. It's about how the public is being administered, how the state is being administered, how the affairs of the people in the state are being managed. That is public administration. Then we have the next area that government covers, that is comparative politics or comparative studies. When we talk of comparative politics, from the word comparative, to compare, so we study various ideologies, we study various types of government, various forms of government. Then we look at the advantages, we look at the disadvantages, we ask ourselves, okay, which ones are going to work in our country? Comparing the advantages and then the disadvantages, which one is more important? Which one should we adopt in our country? Looking at our historical background, looking at the setting of our country, which of these numerous examples of government, numerous types of government should we practice? For example, let's take some ideologies like capitalism and then socialism. Okay, we have a lot of ideologies. Key ones are capitalism and then socialism. So we look at capitalism, we look at socialism, we compare these two. We look at the advantages of capitalism, the advantages of socialism. We look at the disadvantages of capitalism. We look at the disadvantages of socialism. Then we ask ourselves, okay, after comparing the advantages and then the disadvantages, which one is better? Okay, and as we are looking for the one which is better, we do not only focus on the advantages and then the disadvantages, we also focus on the settings of our country, the historical development of our country. Okay, our country has passed through these levels of development. So when we adopt this, or because of where our country is found, because of even how our country is, when we practice socialism, it will help us. When we practice capitalism, it will help us. Then we are talking about what is called comparative politics. You study them and then you compare. Comparative politics. Are we here? We can also talk of presidential system of government or parliamentary system of government. Which one is beneficial? Which one should we practice? So we compare the advantages of both, we compare the disadvantages of both, and not only those ones, we look at various developments, historical developments, constitutional developments of our country. Then we ask ourselves, which one do we think it is better for us? Which one do we think will help our country? Which one do we think, looking at where we find ourselves, looking at the setting of our country, and then how our country is, looking at whether our country is heterogeneous or homogeneous, are we going to adopt even when we are talking about legislature, are we going to adopt unicameral legislature, or we are going to adopt bicameral legislature based on how homogeneous or heterogeneous our country is? So we study them, we compare, we pick the one that we think will work best. So government also covers comparative politics, because we are going to learn a lot of ideologies, we are going to learn various forms of government, and then we compare them to see which ones are best. So we learn the advantages, disadvantages, we check which ones are really going to help. Then we have international relations. International relations talk about how one state, negotiate with other states, or in a nice way, how one state or how one country cooperates with other countries, how one country runs a friendly relationship with other countries. So the friendly relations we have with other countries are what is called international relations. So under international relations, you will learn something like international organizations. You will learn ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. You will learn NEPAD, all the likes. Okay, so we learn these things and we know why it is important for our countries to conduct friendly relations with other countries. Okay, so that falls under international relations. We talk about diplomacy. Diplomacy also talks about international relations. Okay, how we conduct business with other countries in a very nice way, in a friendly way, in a relational way. The relationship between this country and the other countries. Okay, that is the international relation. Then we talk about the last one, which is political theories or political thoughts. Political theories are about the thoughts of some political thinkers. Okay, so some legends of the field: Aristotle, Plato, J.J. Rousseau. We talk about our own man, Baron Louis Charles de Montesquieu. We talk about all these things. They are ideologies. Okay, let me put it in a nice way. They are thinking. What do they think about this system? What do they think the governing of the state should be done? So, for example, doctrines of separation of powers and checks and balances. Okay, those are the ideologies. J.J. Rousseau, what does he have to say about government? What does Aristotle say about government? Okay, so since our brother or one of the thinkers of the field, Charles Louis Baron de Montesquieu, has propounded his theory, separation of powers. Okay, we have checks and balances. So we study all of these doctrines. So when we talk of political theories or political thoughts, we are talking about the thinkings or the thoughts of these people, these prominent people of the field, prominent people of the subject area. Okay, so we look at, okay, what does Baron de Montesquieu, Charles Louis say? What does Aristotle say about this? What does J.J. Rousseau say about this? What does Immanuel Kant say about this? So all these things, we study what they are saying, what these legendaries, what these early thinkers are saying about aspects of government. So we learn all these things. Okay, so that is why you will learn I've mentioned two: separation of powers. You will learn checks and balances. Okay, they have a kind of things in common. These are some of the thoughts of people which we are going to study. All right, so these are basically the 5 scope of government, the 5 areas government covers. Okay, then that being said, let's look at the definition of government. I decided to talk about the scope first because as we define, okay, you will get to understand that, okay, this definition matches this scope of government. This definition matches this area of government. And then we talk about the reasons we study government and then the importance of government. Then we know, oh, okay, and even the features of government. Okay, these ones fall under this scope of government, this area of government. That is why I decided to talk about the scope of government first. So that being done, let's look at the meaning of government. All right, so we look at the meaning of government, or we define government in 3 ways as far as our level is concerned. So as far as our level is concerned, senior high school, SHS, we are going to define government in 3 different ways. We are going to define government as an institution of the state. Okay, then we define government as an academic field of study. In fact, in the next slide or the subsequent slides after the institution of state, I will jump the second one you have here right now, which is the academic field of study. Then I will go straight to government as an art of governing, or government as a process of governing, before we come to this one. So academic field of study is going to be the last one we will discuss, and then you will know why I chose to discuss academic field of study last, after discussing institution of the state and then art or process of governing. So that being said, let's look at the first one: government as an institution of the state. When we talk of government as an institution of the state, we are simply talking about the institutions that we have in the state that are supposed to manage the affairs of the state. The institutions that are being set up by law okay, to administer the affairs of the state. But because we have used institution already, we try to modify the word institution so that we don't give recursive answers when we are asked to define government as an institution of state. Some books decide to use it, but then our advice, instead of using the word institution, you change it to some of these words that I will mention within few minutes. All right, so government as an institution of the state. So we are talking about those structures that have been put in place, okay, those agencies that have been set up to manage the affairs of the state. Okay, the state has a lot of things. We have to make laws, we have to implement these laws. There are a lot of policies that are supposed to be made and implemented on behalf of the state. Which institutions are going to do them? Which organizations are going to do them? Which structures are going to do them? Which agencies and agents are going to do them? So these agencies, this body of persons, this machinery, these structures that we put in place by law to manage the affairs of the state, to make laws, to interpret the laws, to implement the laws, to make policies, formulate, implement them. These are the institutions we are talking about. Okay, so what is the meaning of government as an institution of the state? Government as an institution of the state refers to the agencies and the body of persons that are legally set up to administer the affairs of the state. Government as an institution of the state refers to the agencies and the body of persons that are legally set up, meaning they are set up by law, to administer the affairs of the state or to manage the affairs of the state. Alright, so this is what we are saying. Government as an institution of the state refers to the agencies and body of persons, whichever one you bring first, body of persons and agencies, there's nothing wrong. The agencies and body of persons that are legally set up to manage the affairs of the state. There are key terms to be brought. Legally set up, or that are set up by law. Okay, to manage the affairs of the state. Affairs of the state. Or you can say to administer the affairs of the state. Or you can say to formulate and implement policies on behalf of the state. So the state is very key. Legally or by law, very key. Okay, then we are talking about body of persons and agencies, which you can also say in different ways. So instead of body of persons and agencies, you can say agencies and agents that are legally set up. I will tell you what each one means. Or you can say government as an institution of state refers to the agencies and structures that are set up by law to administer the affairs of the state. To administer the affairs of the state is the same as to manage the affairs of the state. So we are simply talking about those agencies, those body of persons that by law they are supposed to manage the affairs of the state. So we can also define it in a different way. Government as an institution of state refers to the machinery, okay, machinery, which is the same as agencies and body of persons, okay, machinery and body of persons that are established by law, okay, that are established by law to administer the affairs of the state. Okay, so what we are saying is that in your definition, you should have set up by law or legally set up, meaning they have the backing of the laws of the land. So for example, the constitution of the land, the laws, the very various acts in the country allowed these people to perform these functions on behalf of the state. Okay, and then we say that don't forget your state, okay, because they are managing the affairs on behalf of the state. Then you can use machinery, you can use agencies, you can use structures, you can use add body of persons and the likes. Okay, so you can also say it in a very simple way. You can ignore the body of persons and say government as an institution of state refers to the machinery that are established by law, or the machinery that is established by law to administer the affairs of the state. It's also correct. Okay, you can say government as an institution of state refers to the mechanisms, okay, that are established by laws to administer the affairs of the state. But I prefer you make it body of persons and agencies, or body of persons and machinery, or body of persons and structures, or structures and body of persons, agencies and body of persons, body of machinery and body of persons. The reason I prefer that is that the machinery, the structure we are talking about should include people. We can't have a legislature without people. We can't have a legislature without legislatures. We can't have the executive without people. We can't have the judiciary without people. So the body of persons is representing the people in the various agencies. The agencies here, I'm talking about the institutions in place, the structures that have been put in place, okay, the mechanisms in place, and then the body of persons are those people in those agencies. Okay, so you can define it in a lot of ways, so many ways. What you have to understand is we are talking about those instruments that have been put in place to manage the affairs of the state. The instruments, the agencies, the body of persons, the machinery, the mechanisms that have been put in place to manage the affairs of the state. So, for example, we have so under the institution of state, we can categorize them into three. That is the organs of government: the executive, the legislature, and then the judiciary. Okay, so these are the institutions of state. We have the legislature responsible for making of laws, main function, not only, but main function, making of laws. We have the executive responsible for implementation of those laws that have been made by the legislature. And then we have the judiciary responsible for interpreting the laws that are being made by the legislature. So when we talk about government as an institution of state, we are simply talking about the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, those agencies, and then the people in there that have been set up by law to manage the affairs of the state. The legislature, the executive, the judiciary have been set up by law to manage the affairs of the states. All right, so we move on to the next one, which is government as an art or process of governing. Government as an art of governing, or government as a process of governing. It is ART, not ACT. Art, not act. Art. Continuous process of governing. An art of governing, or a process of governing. All right, so we are saying that the executive, the legislature, the judiciary have been set up by law. Constitutionally, lawfully, they are given the authority to manage the affairs of the state. But how do they do it? How do they manage the affairs of the state? That is what is termed as government as an art of governing, or government as a process of governing. How are the institutions managing the affairs of the state? Which processes are they going through? By which means are they managing the affairs of the state? That is government as an art of governing, government as a process of governing. So it is a continuous process. The processes they go through to manage the affairs of the state, the activities they perform, when they are administering the affairs of the state. So I hope by now you should be able to define what government as an art of governing or government as a process of governing is. So it can also be defined in so many ways. What you have to understand is it's about the activities that are involved, the processes, okay, the means by which those institutions we have talked about do their work, the means by which the executive, the judiciary, the legislature perform their functions. How do they administer the state? That is another definition of government. Government as a process or art of governing. So let us not forget it is a continuous something. All right, so government as an art or process of governing. I'll give this nice definition in one book before I give the ones I have in this lesson as well, or on the slide. All right, so government as an art or process of governing refers to the... Okay, so let me take it again. Government as an art or process of governing refers to the day-to-day or the process of performing the day-to-day administration of a state. Okay, it refers to the process of performing the day-to-day administration of the state. It's very simple. Don't worry, I'll give a very nice definition. When we talk of government as an art or process of governing, we are talking about the process of performing the day-to-day administration of a state. So in one book, it defined it like this. Government as an art or process of governing refers to the process of carrying out the day-to-day administration of the state. It refers to the process of carrying out. So process continuous, carrying out continuous, administration continuous. So over here, most of the things, the words we are using are continuous tense. So government as an art of governing refers to the process of carrying out the day-to-day administration of a state. So just like I said, it refers to the process of performing the day-to-day administration of a state. Okay, so when we talk of government as an art of governing, that's basically what we mean. Performing the day. How do we perform the day-to-day administration of the state? By which means do the institutions perform the day-to-day administration of the state? So you can also say it refers to the process of administering the affairs of the state. The process of administering the affairs of the state. Very, very simple. So let's see. Government as an art or process of governing refers to the processes and the means of administering the affairs of the state. So processes, okay, the means of administering the affairs of the state. Very important. So over here too, the state should be here because we are saying that those institutions are performing certain functions. So how they are performing their functions refers to the government as a process of governing. Okay, and let us not forget the institutions are performing their functions on behalf of the state. So how the institutions are performing their functions for the state is what is termed as government as an art or process of governing. All right, so government as an art or process of governing refers to the processes and the means of administering the affairs of the state. You can also say it refers to the process of performing the day-to-day administration of the state. It refers to the process of carrying out the day-to-day administration of the state. It refers to the methods by which the day-to-day administration of a state are performed. So just understand it and put it in a very nice way that will be correct. All right, then we look at the very last definition: government as an academic field of study. When we say government as an academic field of study or government as an academic field, we are simply saying government as a subject. Government as a subject. So just like we are doing, I am teaching government, you are learning government. So government as a subject, government as an academic field of study. So you see, as we are learning, going back to the scope of government, we realize that we are learning these institutions, political institutions, okay? We are learning them. We are learning the executive arm, we are learning the judiciary arm, we are learning the legislative arm. We are also learning how these people work, how they make laws. We learn the processes a bill goes through to become law. So we learn these institutions. So meaning we are learning the first definition we have talked about, institution of state. We are learning how they do their work, how they perform their functions, how they administer the affairs of the state. So we are learning the second definition we have talked about too. So it simply means we are learning these two. The third definition is all about learning the two definitions we have talked about, which is why I decided to put this as a last definition. All right, so that being said, you can define it in your own way, very nice way. So we can say, so what is the key term? The study. So in defining it, you should bring the study or any word related to study. Okay, we are learning it, we are studying it. So government as an academic field of study or government as a subject refers to the study of the institutions responsible for managing the affairs of the state and how the affairs of the state are being administered. So you see, I've combined the two. Government as an academic field of study refers to the study of the institutions responsible for managing the affairs of the state and how the affairs of the state are being managed or administered. We have combined the two. We can define it in so many ways. The only issue is just understand how it goes. Understand that it involves the study. It involves the study. We are studying it. All right. Let us not forget too that under the scope of government, we mentioned political institutions. We have mentioned the study of the institutions. Then we mentioned public administration, how it is being administered. So we have mentioned these two, meaning we can add the other aspects of. So when you define it that way, it's not wrong. You can also decide to add the other aspects, the other scope of government when defining this, and it's also correct. So you can add the political thought or theories, okay, the ideologies, okay. You can add a lot of things into it, but the one I just said is perfect. So I'm about to present another definition. So I can say it refers to the study of the political institutions, or refers to the study of institutions, political theories or ideologies, and how the state is being administered. Okay, and let us not forget, when we are talking about the scope of government, we talked about public administration. Okay, then we talked about comparative politics. In public administration, how will someone administer the state? Definitely there should be acquisition of political power. If you have not been given the political power, you can't administer a state. So how a state or how someone, an individual or a group of people acquire power, political power, and how they use it, we learn all these things. Okay, we learn all these things in government. So this third one is very broad. You can define it in so many ways. So the first definition I gave is that government as an academic field of study refers to the study, very much important, the study, refers to the study of the institutions responsible for managing the affairs of the state and how the state is being administered. Perfect. Or we can add the political institutions, political theories or thought ideologies in defining. So let's see the first one I have in this slide. Government as an academic field of study refers to the study of political institutions, political theories or ideologies, and the acquisition and use of political power. So the ideologies we are talking about a lot of ideologies. I've mentioned some: capitalism, socialism. You are learning all these things. Okay, you are learning a lot of doctrines, political thoughts. You are learning these political institutions. You are learning legislature, executive, judiciary. You are learning political parties. You are learning pressure groups. All of them fall under the political institution. Okay, all right. And then we learn how to administer the state. So how to administer the state falls under the acquisition and use of political power. So don't be confused. It's the same as how to administer the state, because you can only administer the state if you acquire political power. And after you have acquired the political power, you use it. So in the course of using it, you are managing the affairs. Some use it in negative ways, of course. That is why it is a social science concept. So we look at these things in other ways. So this is another interesting definition. It refers to the study of political institutions, political theories or ideologies, and the acquisition and use of political power. I have another definition here. It refers to the study of the institutions responsible for the administration of a state, how the state is being managed, and how political power is acquired and used. So you can even decide to ignore the how political power is acquired and used, because I said in a way it's the same as how the state is being managed, because you acquire the power, then in the course of managing the affairs of the state, you are using the political power you have been given. Concentration on political power, not just any power. Okay, political power, not just any power. Now, homes, our mothers and our fathers have the power, but then they are not political power. Why? They don't have direct bearing on politics. They don't have influence on administration of the states. So any power that doesn't have influence on the states or politics is not a political power. But what we are talking about here is we are talking about the power that has influence on governance of the states and then politics. That is political power. Right. So you talk about the types of power, you get to know all of them. So that being said, we move to the features of government, which will be the last topic in this lesson 1. All right, so we have looked at definition of government in 3 ways. Government as an institution of states, the agencies and body of persons responsible for managing the affairs of the state legally. We have looked at government as a process of governing, the process of carrying out the administration or the day-to-day administration of a state. Government as an academic field of study, the study of the institutions responsible for managing the affairs of the state and how the state is being administered. All right, so let's go to features of government. Features of government. Now, in whichever country you find yourself, a lot of governments have come. They are gone. Some are still in power. They will definitely go. Others will come. Governments will keep changing. Okay, so for example, let's take our country, Ghana, for instance. Okay, let's take my country, Ghana, for instance. A lot of governments. So governments led by CPP, or let me use the names, governments led by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. It came, it's gone, it's over. Governments led by J.J. Rawlings is over. It was over. Governments led by John Ejekum Kufuor came. It's over. Governments led by John Fifi Atamris came. It's over. Government led by John Mahama came. It has been over. Government led by Nana Akufo-Addo is here. It will definitely be over, because this is going to be his, in fact, definitely he's in his last term. His government is going to be over. Government led by Nana Akufo-Addo is going to be over. Let us not forget, the government we are talking about is not only the president, not only the head of government, but then all the institutions, the executive, the judiciary, and then the legislature. We are talking about our MPs, we are talking about our judges, our lawyers, we are talking about the executive, the ministers, the police service, the military service. Let's put together, that is the security service. They all form part of government. Okay, they are part of the institutions that have been set up to manage the affairs of the state. We will look at this into details when we are talking about the organs of government. So just like I was saying, governments have come, they are gone. Other ones have come, they will definitely go. Others will come and they will also go. Meaning no government is permanent. No government is permanent. That is one of the features of government, is non-permanency or periodic change, or you can say periodic or occasional change. Periodic means we have specific time frame where government will be changed frequently. Okay, government periodic change. Government will be changed frequently, maybe by giving time frame. Occasional change means government will be changed, not frequently, but definitely it will be changed. Let's take military regimes for instance. J.J. Rawlings led the military regime, self-imposed the government on the country, but definitely that regime was over. So whether it is a democratic government or autocratic government, whichever type of government, whichever form of government, it is definitely going to be over, either through a periodic change or occasional change. So we say non-permanency. So one of the features, non-permanency, meaning government is not permanent. Or you can say periodic or occasional change. I prefer you don't write only periodic change, you write periodic or occasional change. All right, so no government can rule forever. Every government is subject to periodic change, or at least an occasional change. So the periodic change means we have a consistent time frame where government will be changed. But then the occasional change means there is no time frame, but then no matter how long the government will serve, it will definitely be over. Whether self-imposed, autocratic government, military regime, it will definitely be over. No government is permanent. Why? It's because no government can rule forever. That is to say that every government is subject to either a periodic change, frequent time sets or time frame changes, or at least an occasional change. Once a while, it doesn't occur often, but it will definitely occur. Okay, so that is one of the features of government. All right, then we also have supremacy of government laws. Whichever law that the government of any country makes is superior or above any other law in the country. For example, whatever law a government makes is superior to whichever law that an individual makes, or a group of people. Let's say a group of people come together to form an association, to form any organization. Definitely they are going to get rules and regulations for themselves. They are going to put some laws in place to check their activities. Those laws that the group of people will bring or an individual will bring is always under the laws or in consistency to the laws that have been made by government. So no group of people, no individual can make a law which is above the law of the government. Let's take our constitution, for instance. It is the supreme law of the land, and it is a law by the government. Okay, it is a law by the government. Let's take the acts of parliament. The act of parliament means laws that have been made by parliament. And let us not forget, parliament is one of the institutions of government. So the laws, the acts that have been made by parliament are always above the laws that are made by individual people, by private individuals, by organizations, non-governmental organizations. Okay, so we say supremacy of government laws. Laws made by the government of any country is supreme or superior or above any other law made in the country, either by individuals, non-governmental bodies, or associations. Non-governmental bodies means that those group of people are not institutions of government. So because they are not institutions of government, their laws are always supposed to be in consistency with the laws of government. Their laws are always supposed to be subjected to the laws of government. They are supposed to be under the laws of government. The laws of government are always supreme over all these laws. Then we also have monopoly over the use of force. Monopoly over the use of force. Very much important. When we say monopoly, okay, when I say that he is monopoly in providing services. Monopoly in the provision of services, meaning only one source of that services. I am monopolistic in the provision of, let me use electricity, meaning I am the only one providing electricity. Okay, so when we say that another feature of government is monopoly over the use of force, we are saying that government is the only institution that is authorized, that is given the authority, that has the right to force people to obey laws. So let's say government said, let's use a practical example in this COVID-19 period. Government said everyone should stay in his home. Okay, lockdown, no one should go out. If government realizes that some people are not obeying, some people are going out, I can't force people to obey because I am not among the institutions of government. I am an individual. If even I am a group, I have a group. If our group is not part of government, if our group is not part of the institutions of government, we can't force people to stay in their house. We can decide to force, but it is not lawful. That person can take us on. But then government has every right to force people to obey. Government is saying wear nose mask. If you are not wearing it, government has the right to force you, to compel you to obey it. But we can't force people because we are not part of government. So when we say monopoly over the use of force, meaning government is the only institution, the only body, the only agency that has the right to use force on the people in his country. So no matter, so far as you are in the country, the government can force you to obey the laws of the land. So the legitimate use of force, legitimate, the recognized, the accepted use of force, the only person that he has the reserved power, the reserved authority to, the reserved recognition to use force. The legitimate use of force in any country is reserved to the government of such country alone. So Ghana, for instance, using force to compel people to obey the laws of the land is reserved in the hands of the government of Ghana alone. Mind you, not only the president, the government of Ghana. The president is the head of government, but he's not the only government, okay? All the other institutions, the police service, the military, the executive arm, which includes the police, of course, the judiciary, the legislatures. They are out there. Okay, they are all part of government. Just that the president is the head. This means that it is only the government of a country that has the authority. That is the recognition, the legitimate recognition, the authority to force people, or to use force or coercion. Coercion means using of force. Okay, coercion, force, coercion. So it means the government of a country is the only one that has the authority to use force or coercion to compel its citizens and even foreigners. Like I said, the fact that you are in the country means you should obey. So the government has the power to force you. He has the authority. He is the only, let me not use he. The government is the only body that has the authority to force people, both citizens and foreigners in the country, to obey its laws. So monopoly over the use of power simply is referring to the government having the sole authority or being the sole body to force or to use force on people, both citizens and foreigners, to obey the laws of the land. So government has the power, he has the authority to force people to obey the laws of the land. So using of legitimate power, using of legitimate or legitimacy, using of authority to compel people to obey the laws. The next one, in a way, has something to do with this. That's why I'm taking my time with this. It's very much important to understand this well so that you don't confuse yourself with the next one. The next one has something to do with this. This one is saying that the government is the only body that has the authority to force people. The only body that has the authority to force people to obey its laws. All right, then the next one is universality of government's reach. What it means is government, so you can also say authority of government extends over everyone in the country. Okay, authority of government extends over everyone in the country. The first one is about using force. The government is the only agency that has the authority to use force on people in the country. But this one is saying that everyone in the country is under the government. Everyone in the country is subject to the authority of government. Everyone in the country is under the care of the government. Because everyone in the country is under the care of the government is responsible for protecting them. Not just protecting them, because the government is responsible for protecting them. Yes, if I'm protecting you, it means I have to give you some rules to follow. So because the government the government is responsible for protecting everyone in the country, whichever laws the government makes binds everyone in the country too, meaning everyone in the country is responsible for obeying the laws of the country. Universality of government's reach. Government authority extends over everyone in the country. So far as you find yourself in the country of that government, you are under the authority of the government. The government has to protect you. And because the government has to protect you, because you are subject to his authority, or you are subject to its authority, let me use it to represent the whole body. Because you are subject to the authority of the government, it means you are also supposed to abide by the laws of the government. The laws of the government binds everyone. The laws of government bind everyone in the country, in the borders of the country. Okay, So the authority of government extends to every individual or group within the borders of the country, meaning if you find yourself in the country, it means you are supposed to be under the authority of the government. As a result, anyone within the borders of the country, anyone in the country of a particular government, anyone within the borders of the country of a particular government is subject to the authority of such country, subject to the government. Let me take it again. As a result, anyone within the borders of the country of a particular government is subject to the authority of the government of such country. Okay, so as you find yourself in the country of that country government, as you find yourself in the country of that government, meaning you are under the authority of that government. So the government has to protect you. In the final, you can bring it. The government is responsible for protecting you, and you are also in turn responsible for obeying all the laws of the land. So thereby making the laws of the country binding, meaning the law applies to everyone, binding on everyone in the country, including citizens and foreigners. All right, so that is that. We have ended today's lesson. Now, in today's lesson, we looked at 3 things. The scope of government. We said it covers basically 5 areas. Government covers basically 5 areas: political institutions, public administration, international relations, comparative politics, and then political thoughts. Then we said definition of government is in 3 ways as far as our level is concerned. Government as an institution of states, the agencies responsible for managing the affairs of the state. Then government as an art or process of governing, the process of carrying out the administration of a state, or the process of carrying out the administration, the process of carrying out, the process of carrying out the administration of a state, right? Process of carrying out the administration of a state, or process of managing the affairs of a state. Yes, this is what I wanted to say. Process of managing the affairs of the state, the process of managing the affairs of the state. Then we said government as an academic field of study. Okay, that is you and I, we are talking about government as a subject. Okay, so we are studying government as an institution, and we are studying government as a process. So we are studying the institutions responsible for managing the affairs of the state, and then we are studying the processes of managing the affairs of the state. So we said government as an academic field of study refers to the study of the institutions responsible for managing the affairs of the state and how the affairs of the state are being administered. Then we looked at features of government. We said no government is permanent, that is non-permanency. No government can rule forever. Then we said the laws of government are supreme over any other law in the country. So when an individual or a group of people, non-governmental group, makes any law, that law is under the law of government, or in nice way, the laws of government are above or superior to all the other laws made by private individuals or private organizations. When I say private, I mean organizations that are not part of the institutions of government. Then we said government is the only agency, the only body that has the authority to use force, okay, to compel people to obey its laws. That is monopoly over the use of power. And then we said universality of government's reach, or authority of government extends over everyone. We are saying that so far as you find yourself in the country of that particular government, you are under the authority of that government. As a result, the government is responsible for protecting you, and in return, you are supposed to obey all the laws being made in that country, being made by that government. Meaning, the government's laws are binding on everyone, whether you were a foreigner or you were a citizen. The fact that you are in the country, you are supposed to go according to the laws of the country. So that brings us to the end of today's lesson. Government as an institution talks about political institution, public administration, and then it also talks about international relation. Okay, why does it talk about international relation? It talks about international relation because, okay, let me put it then, I will talk about that later. So government as an institution of state talks about political institutions, okay, and then it talks about public administration as well, because those people are involved in administering the affairs of the state. Okay, all right, but we can put the public administration more under the arts or process of governing. So government as an art or process of governing, public administration, how the state is being administered, and then international relation because it is during the process or the means that governments administer the affairs of the state. In so doing, the government fosters friendly relationship with other countries. So that is part of the processes of governing. Okay, so international relations fall under government as a process of governing. And then we have political thought and comparative politics. Political thought and comparative politics, that falls under government as an academic field of study, because we are studying the ideologies, the thoughts of those legends of the field. We compare them as we learn, we compare them, then we pick the best one. Okay, so all the best. This brings us to the end of today's lesson. We have looked at these things. The next lesson is going to focus on importance of studying government and then functions of government. Importance of studying government is the same as why government is necessary as an academic field of study. Okay, and then importance of government is about how government is necessary as an institution of state or as an art of governing. So in the next lesson, we will look at that. All right, so all the very best. Look out for the next lesson. Enjoy.